Hello, I am Arianna Becerril, and first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of the workshop on Open Citations and Open Scholarly Metadata 2025 for the invitation and for the great program you prepare for this event. Unfortunately, some circumstances happening in my university prevented me to travel at this moment. Apologies for that. You cannot even imagine how I wish I could have been with you in person. But I'm happy that I can share my presentation at least with this video. Thank you, and let's begin. And today I would like to reflect on why do we need Diamond Open Access in the open research information spectrum. From my perspective, it is not only to include content from that is circulating in outlets that are sustained by a different business model. It's not only that, it's more than that. Actually, is the opportunity now that we are working in the framework of the Barcelona Declaration, it is the opportunity to actually correct some of the existing biases in research assessment, but also in the way science circulate around the world. And it's also the opportunity to be truly inclusive and to work for more equity in the system. So my reflections would be centered on that thing. And just a reminder, REDALIC, the Open Infrastructure for Diamond Open Access, and AMELICA Open Science support Barcelona Declaration on Open Research Information, of course. We are big supporters. And I would like to start by saying that Diamond Open Access information is diverse by definition. And it is diverse by definition for many, many reasons. And I will show you some of those reasons here. But particularly, I will focus on these four. First, because it provides or it helps us to have visibility from the global south. I mean, the science that is generated in developing countries in the global south that are mainly circulated in Diamond Open Access journals, particularly the Latin American region, will or would have visibility if we take Diamond Open Access into the research information spectrum, but also local languages, local research agendas, and also we can increase and improve the social relevance of the content. And I will explain myself a little bit more on these four aspects that we think we should think when taking the spectrum of information into account. And I would like to frame my reflections on this paradigm of digital public good, because we believe, well, in REDALIC and AMELICA, that journals and each article that is published in them are actually digital public goods, particularly when the business model is not for profit, when it's run by academics, when it's owned by the academic sector or academic institutions, when they provide this universal benefit, so they contribute to this knowledge commons. So it's very important to take this content into account, because it also means that we are including these digital public goods in the spectrum with these characteristics, with the characteristics of a public good, which is something that we don't find when we need to pay for reading or pay for publishing. And this is particularly important since the United Nations in this global compact now mentions the digital public goods as part of the worldwide strategies, actually, to close digital divides and accelerate progress, particularly across the Sustainable Development Goals. Actually, they define that, well, they mention that digital public goods empower societies and individuals to direct digital technologies to their development needs. Digital public infrastructure is also mentioned as the potential to deliver services at scale, and we need to take that into account. So it is very important. Actually, infrastructures are also part of the 4 principles of the Barcelona Declarations. So we actually have the framework, the international framework, and now with the Barcelona Declaration, we have all the structure to actually look at Diamond Open Access journals actually as those digital public goods that can help us within the open science movement to come back to the essence of science. So Diamond Open Access journals, Diamond Open Access content cannot be out of this spectrum anymore. And why is it that Diamond Open Access help us to reach this visibility and to be inclusive of the Global South? And maybe you have seen this map because I have been using this map for a long time, but actually I use it because it perfectly shapes how we can have a very wrong and biased version when we look at some databases. So we have been suffering, particularly from the Global South, for the lack of visibility in the mainstream, in the so-called mainstream databases, but actually it is because the mainstream databases for the Global South are actually not the ones that are for the Global North. This is, for example, this map is based on the citations on the on Scopus, available in Scopus, and then you can see that the science that is generated in the Global South, it's fairly cited. Well, it's fairly cited when we look at the citations from Scopus. It depends on which window you are using to see the world and the data you are using to map the territory. And we need to always remind that it's not the same. The map, it's not the same as the territory. But unfortunately, our research assessment systems, our different rewards and the academic career are based on this very, very biased view of the world. So we need to think that there's more than that. We need to remind that there are other channels where quality science, and I underline quality because sometimes it is seen that the research that is being circulated in Diamond Open Access journals, they are not of quality, but this is totally wrong. And this is, for example, a map of authors. It is not citations, but it's authors, how they interact, they collaborate in co-authorship based on the articles coming from the journals indexed in Redalic. Then you can see the map is different. Then you can see that there's science and knowledge that is being generated in the Global South, in countries from the Global South. And actually, how is the interaction? Is a living entity, actually, the science. But we need to look at a different, through a different window if we can see that. And these 3 maps that I'm going to show right now is just to show, or just to demonstrate that we can have, for example, Diamond Open Access journals that are more, we have higher numbers of Diamond Open Access journals in Latin America compared to Europe, actually, or to Africa. But actually, Asia is different. But actually, if you can, even if we are looking at journals by country based on the Redalic database that have, it's evident that we have more coverage for Latin American journals. Even if we can see this map, then when you see, for example, the map of readers of the same content that is published by those journals in the latter map, then you can see the readers. You can see a wide diversity of readers that is actually geographically distributed around the world. And if you see, for example, then you compare authors, then you have readers, then you can see that Diamond Open Access scope is broader than some other kind of content that is being published under other business models. So it is, in this case, it gives a fair or at least more visibility for the countries of the global south, but also show who is reading this kind of content and how are these networks of authors based in terms of countries. Then if you compare that with Scopus, for example, then you can see that we can have different maps, right? So this is one of the reasons because we insist that also OpenAlex take Diamond Open Access into account. We have challenges in that mission. I will talk about this at the end of this presentation, but then we need to work on that. Well, regarding languages, the inclusion of local languages, and so we can go in the multilingualism line that also many initiatives are also highlighting. From a study that we recently conducted in Redalic regarding the adoption of APC business models by Diamond Open Access journals, we find out that more than 100 journals started to adopt or to charge authors for publishing. And this actually, well, started to happen with more strength after the pandemic, after also this flip to APC from various publishers, commercial publishers actually. But this circumstance started in Latin America, and this is very unfortunate and actually concerning because we are losing Diamond Open Access journals. But in this graph, in this figure, we can see that it is not only that we are just losing digital public goods and now they are, products of the commercial market, but the thing is that we are losing more than that. We are losing local languages, for example. So as you can see in this graph, there's actually how the curve of the Portuguese language is decreasing. I mean, the content that is being published in journals from Latin America that used to publish in Portuguese and Spanish, now at the same time when they adopted APC, you can see there's a correlation of these losses in terms of language, so the local language. So Portuguese is losing strength in this sense, and English is gaining this strength. So it's good, of course, to have the science published in English as well, but not at the expense of the local languages. This is our argument. And then you can see how these yellow bars, you can see the English is growing, but we are losing local languages as Portuguese, for example. So this is very concerning, and actually it correlates when the year they started to charge authors. And this is because they, for many reasons, but because they start to receive submissions from many other countries, but also the authors, actually local authors, they feel this pressure to publish in English and not exactly in the local language. So, for example, in Redalic, that is, and we work exclusively with Diamond Open Access journals. You can see a very diverse coverage of languages. You can see Spanish, Portuguese, French, German, Italian, Serbo, Lithuanian. You can see a lot of languages because since we index Diamond Open Access journals, these journals reflect the local languages better than when we see, for example, these studies by language from commercial journals. And what about research agendas? And this is something very interesting too. We took this data from that research, the set of journals that started to charge APCs. As you can see, Brazil is the main in the list, and the main country that whose journals are starting to flip to APC. But actually, if we look at the topics those journals are publishing, then we can see very interesting things. For example, in Mexico, you can see the topics that the journals that started to charge authors, which are the research agendas that they use to publish. For example, you can see, well, this is in Spanish mainly, but you can see that there's a lot of research in corn, for example. In some of the, actually the local research strategies that are being addressed by governments and institutions because they try to attend local problems and local challenges that we have in Mexico. But if you can see other countries, this is, this is taken from the topics of the articles that are being published by those journals that have started to charge authors. And for example, let's look at Cuba. Cuba, for example, had a lot of scientific output in sugar, for example, because they have these fields of sugar. So when we start to think how this distortion or disruption of the APC adoption by these journals, and if they want to actually make profit from it, which is not the case for all the journals that started to adopt APC. Some, or actually the majority of them, they adopt APC because of survival reasons. But if we start charging authors and we think on the profit as the main engine to keep the journal alive, then we will start seeing this distortion in these topics that these journals are publishing. So we need to be monitoring this information and how these research agendas evolve, or actually go backwards, or they make more global, but actually maybe they start to not paying attention to the local challenges, national problems, national research topics. So we need to be very, very careful to monitor the evolution of this, because I think they can give us a lot of information of what happens when a journal start being part of this commercial market. And also to remind that Diamond Open Access is not only relevant for science, but also for education. Actually, when we look at the users and backlinks and how the content is indexed by other platforms around different or across different sectors, we can see that open infrastructures, at least like Redalic, provide a very important service for libraries, also for universities, higher education institutions in general, distance learning, for example. so students studying abroad, for example. So it is important to remind that and just to take that into account when we look at the open research spectrum. And finally, on the on research agendas, just to have another example of what are the trending topics in some periods of the year, depending on the season, for example. In the Redalic database, we can see that we have more queries on, for example, tropical diseases like dengue, or depending also on the time of the year. But we can see also a lot of queries around rural migration, which is actually a research topic that is shared across many countries in Latin America, as you can imagine. So these kind of topics are being addressed by Diamond Open Access journals. These topics need to be circulated and need to be read in the local languages in order to have the social applicability and the social relevance that we want to achieve. So again, Diamond is a way to reflect local research agendas, but also local languages. As I said before, we have challenges. We know that at the time we want to integrate Diamond Open Access information. Perhaps one of the biggest is the hegemony that proprietary databases and commercial databases have in terms of the industry of prestige, in terms of the recognition as the mainstream databases, in terms of of this myth and assumption that those databases like Web of Science or Scopus and their metrics and classifications as quartiles, they are totally recognized as hegemonic databases of quality, databases of international science, for recognition, also for researchers. So we need to break that, to dismantle that industry of prestige based on that hegemony of commercial databases if we want to give Diamond Open Access an opportunity to be part and to be fairly recognized, because we insist that it is not a matter of quality, despite in many forums I have heard that quality in Diamond Open Access journals is always questioned, is always under doubt, right? And I insist on this fact, but actually there are some journals that are indexed in Scopus, for example, that have not been accepted by Redalic criteria. And I'm sure the open infrastructure, different open infrastructures can give similar data. So we need to really think about what we are considering quality, what we are considering prestige, in order to break these barriers and to actually give Diamond this opportunity to be part of the landscape, to be part of these big databases, because we can have a more comprehensive database, for example, like OpenAlex, but still we can see there's a bias from the science that is published in the Global South. There's a bias when we see Diamond Open Access reflected there. So we need to work on that if we really want to correct those biases. It would be very helpful, at least for the science generated in the Global South. And also we need to recognize that we have more dispersion in terms of the content. Is more scattered, since it is not concentrated in Scopus or in Web of Science. We have a more diverse landscape of these journals around the world. Well, in Redalic, we focused on integrating actually this content from Diamond Open Access journals, but we have a better coverage of Latin America. Now we are working with Africa and Asia as well, and Europe as well, in order to index their journals, and also with North America, actually with the whole world. But we still have a better coverage from the Latin American journals. Then we recognize that there are this dispersion. There is this dispersion of journals, diamond open access content around different data sources, around different, an heterogeneity of platforms. So we need to really work on that if we want to integrate this diamond open access content into the spectrum and work very closely with green open access and with repositories. In Latin America, I think we are doing a great job together with La Referencia to integrate diamond and green open access in order to have a more comprehensive view of the research that is being circulated in the non-commercial sector. And just to highlight that we can, if we include this diamond open access, we can really have an impact on research assessment. It is not only about interoperability, it is, yes, we need that. It's a sine qua non condition, of course. We need to interoperate. We need to agree on languages. We need to agree in protocols of communication. But we actually need to break this mindset and this hegemony around what we consider quality and what we consider international or what we consider peripheral knowledge. We need to break those myths if we want to actually, as I said, give diamond open access an opportunity. Latin America is actually the main or the prevailing the sustainability model for journals. So we want to be part of the whole map, but for that reason, we need to include diamond open access. And just some final thoughts. So we need to take into account content from diamond open access, actually, in two words, for equity and for diversity in the ecosystem. We need to include it in research assessment. We need this kind of content in science policies, in decision making, in the new era of bibliometrics or metrics or cartographies or whatever metrics that we can have in the future for discoverability purposes as well, but also for raise prestige on non-commercial publishing, for the recognition of science generated in the global south, and also to allow multilingualism and local research agendas to be part of the global conversation, but actually addressing local challenges that we can face in our different societies. Well, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to share this presentation, and it's very unfortunate that I'm not with you at this moment, but thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts.